what's going on at the VA? Let's find out. Congressman John Shimkus is with us today. We called you, John, yesterday, hoping to discuss ethanol, and I'd like to do that as well. But since we first made that phone call, it turns out that surgeries have been suspended at the VA Center in St. Louis. That's very unusual, isn't it?
Well, I'd like to say it's unusual, but we had the same issue and more catastrophic issue in the Marion VA Center in deep southern Illinois. So this is a continued cause for concern on veterans hospitals and veterans benefits.
See, I plead ignorance. I am not aware that this was also the case in Marion.
Oh, in fact, there was a couple deaths attributed to malpractice, docs uncertified or poorly certified who had jumped from one state to another and there was the issue of national licensing. We've had a terrible time. Congressman Costello and I and the senators have been involved with the VA hospital down in Marion. So for those of us who have constituents who are served in both areas, this is just frustrating. We've been dealing with this issue now at Cochrane a couple years with the dental issue also, and Marion's been 5 or 6 year issue.
Do we have evidence that this is going on at other VA facilities around the country?
Well, I'm not on the committee. We did have a hearing at the federal building last year with Bob Filner and Jeff Miller, who swapped places as chairman and ranking member of the VA system. I know veterans who've used the system and have been very, very pleased, but I also know many of them who continue to complain about their service at multiple facilities. So I don't know nationally other facilities. I do know the two that I deal with. And I also have numerous clinics, which are, in essence, nurses and some docs come so people don't have to travel as far. That's been a big success by the VA. But I'm aghast. I am just so disappointed and frustrated at the VA, and I don't know if it speaks to a government-run system versus, maybe a lot of these veterans would rather go to a Barnes or a Children's or a, St. Louis U or someplace, St. John's, you name it, all the great hospitals in St. Louis. I don't know what the solution is.
Does the VA also run Walter Reed?
No, that's the Department of the Army, and that is being closed and moved in BRAC to Bethesda, which is a naval hospital. Those are active duty facilities.
I see. Now, there have been some problems at Walter Reed in recent years, but I don't believe with the patient care for people with how would you describe for surgeries, for example? I think it was the rehab unit that was the center of controversy years ago.
Well, the big center of the controversy was, if you can remember, was the housing of disabled active duty folks. They were put off post, and the living facilities were substandard, probably being kind. They had mold, they had stopped up plumbing, and these are veterans. And I think that's what really was the attack on Walter Reed. Walter Reed has significantly changed their rehab facilities based upon disabled vets who've come back, and they helped redesign the rehab. Now I think it's considered state-of-the-art, and you see these folks with these amputees climbing mountains and kayaking and doing all these other things that people who have full facilities may not be willing to do.
This is John Shimkus, Congressman from Illinois, who's with us on the line right now. We're talking about the situation at Cochrane Medical Center where the VA has suspended surgeries because the instruments haven't been cleaned properly. So let's talk a little bit about ethanol. We do see that prices of food around the world are increasing, and there's some of that food inflation here in the United States. Recently, the Wall Street Journal pointed out that 4 out of 10 rows of corn are now dedicated to ethanol for fuel. And do you still think that that's a good idea, Congressman Shimkus, since people probably will see the price of beef or the price of milk or the price of foods that use corn syrup go up if a lot of that corn is being used for purposes other than food?
Right. I mean, you really need to know, and the experts from in hybridization and stuff like that from Monsanto will talk more clear about this of yield and specific corn grown for specific purposes. Well, when people just throw out the food price increase, I mean, what they have to also consider is the changing diets of the developing countries, like China, and like they're going to more of a developed country type of meals versus subsistence type agriculture, and that's placing more demand. The food fuel debate, it will always be around. I would always argue to people, tell me what we have done as a country to decrease any reliance on imported crude oil. It may be the Chevy Volt, but then you're going to have reliance on electricity. But that's just now. The ethanol is the only thing we've done. And maybe some biodiesel, some mixture of soy or cellulose or beef tallow in diesel fuel. That's another thing. Is I would argue is the only thing that we've done to decrease our reliance on imported crude oil. We're at 13 billion gallons of ethanol production at this time, and that displaces about 446 million barrels of oil. I mean, it's not the total solution, but it is doing something. People attack the ethanol subsidy, if you want to call it that, is going to be greatly attacked by the food fuel people, by the environmental folks, by a lot of folks in my party on the expending. But what we don't get credit for is the $8 billion in taxes, ethanol production in like 32 of the 50 states, local communities, homegrown fuel, homegrown refinery, decreasing our reliance on imported crude oil. I think it's a huge success, but one that will be under attack.
Yeah, this is John Shimkus, Congressman from Illinois.